I see it in my dreams. Night after night, the same house. 1,000 sketches, 1,000,000 hours of research, and finally, I found it. The estate at Echo Bluff. Hello? Listen, I need to do this. I'm at the door. See you soon. Okay, now why am I here? Hello? Probably should have worked out a plan if someone is, here. What was that? The pipes. That's gonna throw me off. Well, I'm pretty good with a wrench. Come on, house. Show me what you got. Friggin' butterfly wannabes. Guess I'm gonna have to take the scenic route.
Have you come to play?
Oh, hell no. Could have been worse. Hello? No. No, what do you want from me?
And we are live.
Good evening, folks. You're watching Dev Duels with the TorchFork mob. I'm happy to announce that we have the developers from Perception here. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Sure.
I'm Amanda Gardner. I am the writer of Perception.
And I'm Bill Gardner. I'm the creative director.
Perfect. And with me, you guys probably know me by now, Phanff. That's not exciting. We also have Kellogg over here. And we're going to be playing some Perception today. And we're going to be talking about the amazing product that is Perception. So,
thank you.
Kellogg.
Excited to be here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, first off, we usually like to just, before we get into too much about the gameplay and everything like that, because obviously we're going to get a chance to look at some of that, we like to hear a bit about what your story behind becoming a developer is. There's usually some, backstory of quitting a corporate job and spending all of your money and cashing in everything that you've got and putting your whole heart and soul into this. So tell us what led you to build games, and particularly how you ended up building Perception.
No, there's definitely a lot of heart and soul and blood and sweat
Babies.
and babies and So so for me, for one thing, I always spent some time in Hollywood, working at Universal Studios. I was a film major growing
Not
up.
the theme park.
No, definitely not. Although I almost died there. That's a side story. True side story. I won't get into right now. But so all my life, I grew up an enormous fan of video games, obviously, to the point where when I was about 10 years old, I was sending in design documents to Nintendo.
Nice.
Just ideas for, hey, here's what you should do for Metroid 2 and all this sort of thing. And they would always give me like sort of the form rejection, like, hey, we can't take unsolicited ideas kind of thing. But I just the fact that they responded got me like in love even more with games and trying to the idea of creating them. But it was always that games were done in Japan, right? For most of my youth, it was all done overseas by Nintendo and Sega and all of that. And so I did the film thing, my other passion. And then in college, when I was out at Universal Studios, all of a sudden you had this big movement of Western development again. And so you had, companies like Blizzard and then, obviously Irrational Games and this sort of thing. And so I moved back to the East Coast, took up my old college job at Electronics Boutique, where I met Ken Levine.
Yes.
The founder and creative director at Irrational. And
That's
I impressed
awesome.
him enough to earn a interview in QA and made my way into design eventually. And so I was there for about 12 years. I was a lead level designer on BioShock and then design director on BioShock Infinite. And then when, Irrational sort of ran its course or whatever, I started the Deep End Games. And the idea, it wasn't something that I had planned. It was not my intent to start a company, but I was finishing up my grad school program. I was getting a degree in human factors and information design, which is like UX for games. One night I had this idea about what if you were playing a horror game as a blind person, and I immediately called up Amanda, and I was like, "Hey, what if we made a horror game where you're, plays a blind woman?" She's like, "What are you talking about? We're not making any games." And I was like, "No, but we can make."
It's like 10 at night. I'm like, what is happening?
So we the two of us had always collaborated on everything we've worked on individually. She's a novelist. And, obviously I'm a game developer. And so I'm always reviewing her and editing her writing. And then she's always editing my level design and that sort of thing. And so just
that's amazing.
critiquing each other's work. And then when this idea hit, we just started talking it through. And we're like,
By the end of the night, like the story.
Hey everybody,
was,
Christopher
the
Rod here,
groundwork
and
was laid,
welcome
the story
to
was
a new
there.
game.
It almost
It's
emerged
called
organically.
Perception.
It was really
This is
kind
coming
of
out
amazing.
in a couple of days from now. It's
So yeah,
developed
we
by
did-
the
okay.
Deep End Games, which
Yeah.
is
did
a
not,
absolutely.
We did not plan on this. We did not plan on having 3 years and 2 development babies in it. So now we've got 4 children. So that was wild. In fact, Gamumentary, this great company that makes documentaries about game devs, just came out to our house, and the Gamumentary on Us just came out. So if you're interested, you should check out our Twitter or Facebook. We've got links to our Gamumentary documentary. It's about 45 minutes, and you get some pretty wild stories about development in the deep end.
That's awesome.
I am definitely going to watch that right after this.
So you guys are really like a designing duo here. Like, so you said you were a novelist. Do you help her write novels?
Only in the sense that just like, again, feedback, brainstorming, and editing. But for the moment, it's her thing. Just the
He's
same
my
way.
toughest critic, but absolute best critique partner. Like I would, send it to my other critique partners, and they'd come back with little things. But because of his, mind for really breaking apart a story when it comes to design, he approaches my novels with a completely different and critical eye. And really knows how to snap a story into place. It's really pretty great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And similarly with having brought her, we've played games together. She's critiqued my work forever. The fact that she's has that fresh perspective and isn't beholden to the sort of rules that I don't believe that there are rules in anything really, but particularly in game development. Anyone who tries to tell you this is the way you build a game or this is the way you do a story is probably full of it. But what's interesting to me is right. I mean, you see the rules being bent and broke every single day now, especially with the indie scene. But yeah, so she comes in with a fresh perspective where it's like, I'll be explaining a scenario to her. You come into a room and then you see this thing over in the opposite corner, and I'll explain it to her, and she's like, well, wait, why does it have to be that way? And I'll be like, well, because that's the way I've always done it. And so we have this interesting different perspective on how we're developing things and how we're developing the story in the game.
And I taught high school English for about 12 years. And so I feel like games have a lot of sort of like mythology references, but you never see references to classic literature, like that would be taught in schools. And so a lot of, in Perception, there's tons of little hidden literary references, you know, sort of like Arthur Miller, Hemingway type stuff, just sort of thrown in that you kind of.
But I promise that's awesome.
It's not, yeah.
It's not like
it's not boring, everybody. It's really great.
It's more literary. It's more literary.
Some people are like,
excellent,
"Oh man, I hate English class." Never mind. But it's not like no. I'm sorry.
Well, when I was playing through the game, I noticed a couple of maybe one pop culture reference, what I thought was pretty cool. So I don't want to give it away, but there was a certain
it's up to you.
It's
Statue.
juicy.
Ooh, I like that.
You know what? I'm going to leave it to the imagination and the people who should be playing this game play and take a look at it. So I'm not one for spoilers, so I'll leave that one.
Yeah, no, it's super cool when people catch that. I've only had a few people, but you know, to when people start to piece together the, you know, like I think this is a reference to such and such, and like when they see how it hooks into the themes that we're laying down. It's a very narrative rich game, or at least we try to make it that way. And one of the most rewarding pieces of working on it is you know, watching streams and hearing people as they're play be like, wait a minute, hold on, I think that this means that this character is actually you know, and then they start to tie it into all this, like, you know, in some ways there's a lot of subtlety here, and that's something we've tried to ramp up in for the remaster that's coming out in the next probably this week or next week. It's just, you know, it's tough to coordinate all these things, but really hammer home so that we can a lot of these themes a little more clearly, I think.
Yeah. So one of the things in the game is I feel like you really get the most out of it when you really explore and really touch everything and really get all of the experiences so that you can tie everything together. And in the remaster, there's going to be a mode where essentially you can play it like a walking sim.
Right.
Or you can't die. So for those of you who really want to, like, I want to pick up every object, I want to learn every bit of side
out there, the completionists,
and who play like sort of like I do. That's how I play. Definitely story mode is going to be perfect for you. The remaster is not a different version of the game. It's a patch for Perception. So it's not like hold off on buying Perception. It's it'll be, but the Switch version is coming out soon. So
yes, oh man.
I know. So I know how serious you are about. You're like me. How serious you are about Nintendo, but I mean, it's just like it's such a great platform.
Well, and when I was when I just started at your deck, when I was at the festival, there was a specific line of people wanting to play your game just only on the Switch. I stood behind somebody. I was like, "Hey, are you waiting in line to play? There's other open stations." Like, no, I want to play it on the Switch.
Yeah, I mean that's super exciting because, you know, I was just out at Tulsa for XPO. And, you know, we only had 3 stations there, but there were 2 PCs and the Switch version, and it was a very similar situation. And we tell people like, oh no, you can chop on here, and people usually would be like, oh, okay, cool, but I really want it on the Switch. Yeah. I'm just checking it out.
It's going to be amazing to play that in the dark, like total dark, like even under the sheets, and just have the creepiness factor of it. You know,
I have to say, like. So I mean, I'm in love with the system, and I you know, I've flown with it a bunch. I've taken it all over the place, and playing Rabbids and Zelda and Mario Kart, all these games, and now you know, the Flame of the Flood just came out. There's so many games. Taking them all on the go is phenomenal. But for whatever reason, and I'm obviously super biased here, it was extra special to me, obviously because it's my game, but it was also really special to be able to play a game like this with this kind of atmosphere on the go. That to me was something that I've never experienced, because I've played a million. You know, I love the 3DS, and obviously the level of fidelity between the 3DS and the Switch is huge, but it still feels familiar, right? Because it's roughly the same experiences. I haven't really played a game that has this much atmosphere and like I'm always careful about calling it horror, even though it is. We started calling it more thriller. Is what we like, because again, it's so narrative driven and there's really no gore and that sort of thing. But just to be able to take something like that on with you anywhere and play it in bed, or play it and even in the park. There's sometimes where we take the kids out and I have to test the game. I take it out. It feels like a super fresh experience because you've never played something like this out of your house, out of the confines of your home.
Cool. Oh, it's so true. I actually had the cool experience of playing with someone on the plane right after it had been released on the way to PAX, which is awesome. Nice. I noticed you were in the B cap, by the way.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disheveled today. I just got home yesterday, so I'm trying to get things back in order, and I just threw this cap on. But
I was going to say you would be happy to know that this broadcast is coming live from the middle of Boston.
Nice.
So go Red Sox. That's all.
Except for me. I mean, I'm the only Canadian in the company, so
as long as you don't like the Habs, we're cool.
All good. Okay, so let's talk about the main mechanic of this game.
Sure.
What is echolocation?
Sure. So I think the concept, the idea of echolocation, everyone has a different perception of what that is, right? But based on what you hear about, dolphins and bats, and also what you hear about in things like Daredevil, right?
Right.
But the truth is that humans do echolocate. They can use echolocation, and there are a number of blind people who can use sound to see things. And one of whom we met, a man by the name of Daniel Kish, who runs an organization called World Access for the Blind, and he himself is completely blind, and he can mountain bike. He goes around, he makes this specific clicking sound, and there's all kinds of videos on his website where he shows how it works, but then also, how he goes about his day to day. We actually met up with him in Boston to grab dinner one night and just kind of bounce around ideas. And needless to say, it was nerve-wracking, but amazingly inspiring to watch him navigate the wretched streets of downtown Boston, where you've got all this
cobblestones.
It's all true.
I mean, we ate a sushi dinner with him. Sushi's pretty involved. Sticking up and dipping and all this. Like, he's just amazing, and he's so kind, and his charity is so amazing. He was telling us when he saw us that he just got back from teaching 2 blind toddlers to echolocate. Like, what is better than
That's
helping
amazing.
a child learn their world? Like, so it's a really amazing charity, and it's a really amazing thing that people can do. So that is one thing we always want to say is, like, this is not a superpower. This is something that a lot of people can learn to do. Obviously, the level of detail and perception is not exactly,
So it's tricky because obviously video games are a visual medium, right? I think most people. We judge so much of our experience in games with the visuals. And so my goal was always to try and capture what we felt through all the research, what the feeling of echolocation it might be like. And, all this research we did and all that sort of thing. And ultimately, we have to err on the side of something that's going to be an experience that people want to experience, right? Because if it's something that people in our early testing, we actually erred on much more of much less information that we're giving away with the echolocation, and people kind of rejected it. They're like, "This is too much. This is like," and so you balance it and you find a spot that like captures the feeling you're looking for, pays enough. Or captures enough of what that feeling you think is enough to sell the echolocation idea, but then also hopefully we'll get it in front of enough people that you can get your message out there and that you can have an impact hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. I know when I first started, I'm like, wow, this is really unique how it like draws your distance, and you can start learning to like take your first steps and try to navigate. It's just, and then the use of colors is just absolutely prominent as well. So how did you go about choosing which colors to use and when to use them in the specific locations?
So that was a mix of a variety of different things. I think a big part of it was, I was doing all this research in my final semester in grad school. And, we were also in separate classes had talked about a variety of different meanings behind color, including you talk about the meanings in different cultures and the context between, you name a color, and there's heavy context behind each one in various cultures and whatnot. And you try and find spots that have touchstones that people understand. And for example, we always think of darkness. We always think of blues, right?
Right.
There's a shortcut that you think about it. I don't know, you're watching the Brady Bunch show, right? And they shut the lights off. The lights, it doesn't really get darker. They just turn other lights on that are blue, and it's like, oh, it's dark now, right? And so you have touchstones like that help further create the illusion. But then it's also, you balance that with what's going to look and feel good and some other context. So, for example, like blue is known to be one of the most popular colors out there. It's like far and away, when you test globally, it always is number one.
Oh, it's funny.
But then there's also bits like when as the house starts to get angry with Cassie, the main character, and as it listens and the house shifts to like yellows and red, and eventually yellows and oranges, and eventually reds. Part of the reason we went with red is to sell the intensity, to sell the fear, but also to sell the deception. Red is known to be I'm probably using the wrong synonym here or whatever, but the color of deception. And so see reds in the game. That's meant to say that don't necessarily trust what you're seeing or experiencing. So there's all these little nudges towards the symbolism we talked about before. And green is often in many cultures to represent truth. And so that's why when
safety.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so when you see something in the world as a landmark or a memory, those are green, and those are things that are, kind of your safe spaces, I guess,
Yeah, you trust the green.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Fair enough. And I also really like it when you use your cane, you actually can, or start the echolocation, you can hear when you hit something, it has like a distinct sound.
Yep.
So how many unique sounds are in the game, and what kind of research did you go through to get that?
To have the audio director from BioShock Infinite, Jim Bonney, and he's just a genius. And Jim did such a great job replicating, this is what this tile sounds like, and this is what this kind of metal on this kind of surface, he just really had all of these really, really great sounds, and we had so much fun putting them in.
So in terms of numbers, I wouldn't even know, because there's so much variety, even on the individual types of surfaces. But I think a lot of that comes down to, I had originally, I think I set out to I want, I had a giant list of, okay, this kind of tile and this kind of wood floor and a hard floor and a hollow floor carpet, and just listed all these things out, and you put them in the game, and then you just keep I think I probably drove him a little crazy by the end of the project, because he was like, well, more, he always over provides, always over delivers. But I was constantly asking for more and more and more, and it was a fun. I'm sure I drove him nuts, but it was fun.
Starman, I think what you're talking about is synesthesia, where you can see colors and see sounds.
Yeah.
I believe that's what it is.
Yes.
Synesthesia.
Synesthesia, yeah.
Synesthesia, yeah.
So we, it's funny. That semester that I told you that I spent all this time researching, there was one student in one of my classes who had that, and they had given a presentation about their experience and how they it's been a while, but I believe that what she was saying was that she could see music and she'd see it in color, and it was really strange having her describe it to me, but remarkable stuff, the way the brain works.
The composer Kandinsky is also a painter, so you can see Kandinsky's paintings and also put them along with his symphonies, and sort of it's kind of amazing. He became famous for both. So
you guys are so freaking creative and talented.
It's pretty mind blowing.
Thank you.
We, when talking to a lot of developers, it's a lot of times it's like folks who have really struggled to bring some concepts together, and you guys are like, yeah, we had these experts come in and we did all this research, and it's really great to see. I mean, it's really refreshing to see a lot of attention to detail put into an indie game, because I think that gets lost a lot in smaller titles. And I can see why Nintendo decided that they'd want to make you one of the nindies, as they say.
Sure.
Sure. Is there a deeper story behind that at all, or is that like serendipitous? Because I talked to one other developer who had said that Nintendo emailed him out of the blue completely, and he had one day he was just on the Switch. Yeah, and he I guess his publisher had perhaps been at work, behind the scenes. But yeah, what's the story behind getting on the Switch?
Well, so
We're blessed.
yeah, we're super lucky, super grateful, because I was saying before that, I was always obsessed with Nintendo. I mean, I've always loved games, and I play everything.
He does.
But
You see our basement.
Nintendo has always
Well-rounded.
a special place in my heart. They've they've got me through a lot of tough times, and I think that it was always my goal to create games, and very much via inspiration from their work. And going back to even when I was working on BioShock, I can't tell you how many times I would just go, and we would have design discussions and debates, and I'd just be like, guys, like we're talking about doing this thing. I was like, look, this is how they did it in Super Metroid. They block you this way. We should make it so that you get Electro Bolt, and then you have to use it on a door to show how you can use it in the environment, and then you can use it for the 1-2 punch, and then you can use it in combat freeform, and then you can use it as a shotgun, and just sort of like take the Nintendo method. And the method as if it's one thing. But anyway, so always near and dear to me, but it's always bothered me that I've never been able to get or never been on any of their platforms. Right? That's always been like a hole in my heart. And so when they had announced this, actually before they announced the Switch, I reached out to Nintendo just to get the ball rolling. And when I'd sent them a demo for the game and all, pitched them it, and they're like, I think it was right up their alley for what they're looking for. And I don't know how they curate, honestly. I know that they are selective, and I think that's how they get the best quality stuff on their systems. So I think that we happened to fill a niche where they didn't have a lot of spooky games. They didn't have necessarily a whole lot of narrative-driven games. They have a lot of really fantastic platformers and really great action games and action RPGs, and they have everything now, really, when it comes down to it. But I think we nicely filled a few niches that they didn't have, and so they were like, absolutely, let's make this happen. So
yeah, I really think the story mode is definitely going to be one of the talked about features, because I know that when I'm playing a game, sometimes I just want to enjoy the story. Sometimes. So not having to worry about, okay, do I have to play this level or this portion again and again? I just want to play the story.
It's funny because when I I've always liked I always love options in games, right? But one of the many things that Ken Levine taught me was he had this saying. He'd say he likes games that have multiple points of entry, which is to say, different ways to approach the game and to play the game and to experience it. And so these were all discussions that we talked about when we're talking about like SWAT. We were working on SWAT 4. He really liked the idea that we had for the quick mission maker, which very quickly allowed you to select a mission and then be able to say, okay, I want it to be this difficulty with these kind of weapons, and I want to fight nothing but all grannies or whatever, that kind of thing. So you can customize and get an entirely different feeling game and experience just with some very simple options. And that always stuck with me, that multiple points of entry. And so we got a lot of feedback on perception at trade shows and that sort of thing, at PAX, and we occasionally get people coming up being like, I love the game and I love the atmosphere, but I don't want to be chased by this thing. And so
I feel you.
Yeah, so right. And so we hear it and we're like, we thought about it for a while, and we're like, well, we should be able to add something that lets people play without that and just give the gamer what they want. And so that to me, I'm always looking for stuff like that. Yeah.
I noticed that you for the character, you have the ability to do chatty or silent.
Yep.
So can I Amanda, would you mind explaining why we chose the different routes, why you decided to do those two different options?
This is one of the best things to come out of the Kickstarter, actually. So when I write any character, they usually have a fair amount of sass. I really love snarky characters, like snarky, sarcastic, snarkastic, whatever you want to say. Cassie's got a lot to say.
Yeah.
She's really bold. She just tells it like it is. And I really wanted this character to reflect that. And when we did the Kickstarter, a lot of the people were saying, like, this character seems cool, but dude, like in horror, I like my protagonist silent. Like that's really unusual to have a chatty character, that could de-escalate the horror. Like some people just wanted her to shut up in a nice way. And we thought, oh my goodness, like what if we could sort of turn off the lines that were not critical to the plot? And so that's how Chatty Cassie and Silent Night mode came to be. So
really
I obviously think that you should play it on Chatty Cassie because you get the most character out of it. But if you're the type who's like, shh, I'm playing this game, put it on Silent Night.
But the best part is you can change that at any point in the game. So if you feel like she's talking too much, or maybe you want to hear more of what she has to say, you can just go into the options right there on the spot and change it. And so again, that goes back to listening to feedback and valuing that feedback, but then also I think it's just a pure value add, right, for the person who's bought the game. They're like, hey, if I can customize it, well.
One of the biggest things with the remaster is we want to reach more types of gamers, and so with the story mode, it did that. We actually also have a scary mode because we had a lot of people playing, so we basically took all of the feedback. A lot of people weren't 100% sure what happened, with the story part in the level, and so we went in, streamlined the story. A couple people were sort of baffled about the ending. We streamlined that. We really are good at taking feedback. We're not the types to be like, well, the game's out there.
Yeah.
And we went for it.
That's
listen.
definitely appreciative. That's definitely appreciated because, just because some developers say, yeah, my game is absolutely perfect, don't touch it, but you need to be flexible in this industry.
Yeah. Well, you're leaving a lot on the table if you're not listening to feedback. And frankly, that's to me, that's the most fun part.
Watching people like you guys, Twitch streamers.
Seriously, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's why I love watching. Yeah, just like she just said, absolutely.
Yeah. And when you have the two audio options, you kind of you can play it multiple times and get new things out of it. Like for example, the Blade Runner movie, the director's cut apparently is better than the other, but it really depends on how you want to play the game or how you want to watch the movie. So that's
100% agree. Yep.
Yeah. So speaking about that, I think I want to start playing this game. So is that okay with you, Kellogg?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
All right, I'm flipping you
we're
over.
on Skype and we can't see if anybody's asking questions. Let us know if any players have questions for us. We're happy to answer them.
Yes, chat.
Yep,
Definitely do let us know. I'm going to pull that over right now. We have a lot of people here who are really excited to play. I know Caitlin and Starman want to play, so that's good.
Thank you.
But yeah, folks, if you're listening in chat, please do type questions. We will definitely ask them. We promise.
Yeah. So we got one already from Caitlin.
Oh, good point.
Hi, Caitlin.
So how do you guys make the main character, Cassie? She has so much personality. Is she based on anyone?
Oh.
I wouldn't say she's based on anybody, but when I was writing her, I really wanted her to be the type of character I could have a beer with and sit around and goof off. Two of my main inspirations character-wise are Buffy and Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica.
Those are two fantastic references.
Those two are just badass ladies that have no problem speaking their mind, and Cassie is very bold, and Cassie tells it like it is, and those are some of my inspirations. Yeah, I feel like the actress we got, Angela Morris, the second I heard her read Cassie's lines, I was like, oh my god, that's her. That's her. She's just so amazing, and she could riff on things and improvise to the point where she is Cassie.
Yeah, absolutely. She was a joy to work with.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, go ahead. I was gonna say. So I when I met you in person, you had mentioned that you had created these multiple game modes, and you had mentioned just now that you received feedback, and some of that was folks wanting the game to be, more explorative, like you, Amanda, but also other people who wanted it to be, more intense and more, I guess you could say, horrific. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you did to make it scarier?
Sure. So the primary difference there was just about upping the ante for the presence, and so in a lot of ways, what we did was kind of amp up the difficulty and how much the house listens and how aggressive the presence is. So it basically the house gets angrier with you a little easier, and then on top of that, when you do get caught by the presence, should that happen, we added a little bit more of a sting to the penalty when you get caught, and so that comes like we toyed with the idea of a permadeath kind of thing, but ultimately we wound up going with it sends you back to the main menu and you'll have to reload, and so you'll lose a little bit of progress, but not quite, like having to restart. And so again, you try and find the right balance. You listen to feedback, you put it in front of people. And ultimately, again, I don't think the games are ever done. I think that if I had my choice, I would continue to work on this. I mean, we have a couple other things that we're starting pre-production on. Obviously, we're swamped with the Switch version and the updates and all of this. But if I would be very happy to continue to tweak and add. There's a lot that
there's always one more thing.
Yeah, well, there's way more than that. There's always stuff that I just love. I love the world. I love Cassie. I love Echo Bluff and the echolocation. And just everything we've created, and there's always like, oh, what about this mode and what about that? And so anyway, yeah, it's been fun, but we've kind of it was a balancing act, really, is what it was.
Makes sense. Yeah, I could see a permadeath mode actually being pretty challenging and fun in this game.
There's a hey man, there's a chance.
Yeah,
that's right.
And it's just like real life, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want a permadeath. What am I talking about? Never mind. So I was also, when I was playing it for the very first time, I noticed that when I hit my cane, everything still seems to be not. It didn't really move anywhere. Is there, like, for example, if I hit a box and it just kind of stays there?
Sure.
Was there?
No, so we played around with the idea of physics, and I was kind of torn on this, but ultimately, and again, I want to stress that we weren't making a simulation, but right. One of the things that we found in a lot of the tests and the feedback was that we had to be very careful about how much moved around and how much we pushed the sort of sense of betrayal is sort of what I would say internally, is that you want to create atmosphere, you want to create tension, but you don't want to push it so far that people feel like they have no grounding. And so that was number one, was to make it so that things wouldn't you'd sound like you were talking about just like subtle movements and actually just make it so that things weren't completely static. But one of the other pieces here, and this is probably way too inside baseball, but to me, one of the things that really stuck out with and this sounds like a bit silly, but when I would try and get a sense for daily tasks with my eyes closed and that sort of thing, and this is just one of the thousands of things that we did to try and get a feel for what the world feels like when you don't have sight. One of the things that stood out to me was the detail. Like if you closed your eyes and thought about the very space that you're in, the details kind of go away pretty quick. You have to really think about them long and hard to be like, oh yeah. And then you think about this sort of ideal way you picture a hardwood floor, right? You don't think about the imperfections, right?
Right.
And similarly, you don't think about the way that the little things move as you move around, as you tap them, that kind of thing. You think of it almost like a static object in space. And so that sort of plastic nature of the world was something that I really wanted to push.
Okay.
Just
Makes
to kind
sense.
of further that illusion. I know that sounds really super inside baseball, and like that was one of the harder things the harder decisions. But it's a great question. But ultimately, it came down to furthering that illusion of echolocation and blindness, and how much that I felt it was enhanced by again, things being static.
Fair enough.
Nice.
Absolutely. I don't think I can recall any game that would take you to the fact where you actually feel like you're blind.
Well, it's a little antithetical to gaming in a way, right? Because you need to see,
Granted, yes.
unquestionably. Yeah.
But how you're able to bridge that take the blindness and bridge it into a video game. It's brilliant.
Well,
I can, like, personally speaking, my father is visually impaired, so I can only imagine what he has to go through in his life, and this gives me just a small window into what he has to go through on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, that was, if I can be frank, that was one of the hopes, was to try and capture that and to like, we call it perception, but what really drew me to it was the idea of showing a different perspective, because I am always looking for new ideas for stories and for hooks for gameplay, particularly in the horror space. But I love the idea of stepping outside of my own comfort zone, especially as a creator. Every single game I've ever worked on has been, a 6'3" dude with burly dude with beefy arms, who can shoot perfectly and see, has what, I don't even know what's better than 20/20 vision. What do you call it?
Cyborg guys.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I really think that we are not necessarily doing enough in games to show different perspectives. We have a lot of different visual styles, but I don't feel like there's enough that says, "Hey, this is a different worldview." And that was appealing to me, and I think I think it helps get build some empathy.
It's been really nice having all sorts of disabled gamers say, you know what, like, representation matters, and having a protagonist that has a disability, like, that means something to me, and having those people come forward and say that has been really, really amazing.
Like, even the Switch hardware itself. I brought over the 1-2 Switch game with my dad, and he absolutely loved it.
Yep.
Isn't that game
Loved
fun?
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's just the fact that he's able to play it with me.
I mentioned
wow.
I mentioned just getting back from Tulsa from XPO, and I did a presentation on 1-2 Switch. That was the game we're supposed to choose, and I don't like the name of the topic, but the panel was terrible games I love, and everyone says terrible, but like nobody picks a terrible game. Exactly, yeah. And I think 1-2 Switch, what really stuck with me was that it's a completely different way to play games, and to the point where if anyone hasn't played it, they have a like a showdown game where you're cowboys, and you have somebody saying ready, aim, fire, and you're not supposed to look at the screen. You look at each other, and it's a quick draw, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like you try and get people to flinch, and just the fact that I'm playing it with my son and I'm staring him down, like making eye contact. I'm like, after doing it a few rounds, it's like this is hugely innovative, and it's not getting the credit that it deserves. It's a different way to experience a game.
It's really, really fun. If you haven't played it, it's a hoot. Like we have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old in addition to the babies, and watching them play the 1-2 Switch is just hilarious. I could watch them play for hours.
And so it's awesome that you were able to play with your father. That's what it's all about right there. Different experiences, right?
That's awesome. Well, speaking of different experiences, this obviously, you were saying that you're a big Nintendo fan, and there have been some Nintendo horror games, although not many. Were there any games, particularly horror games, that inspired you when you were making this game?
Heck yeah.
One of our favorite horror games that inspired this back from a long time ago is Fatal Frame.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh, nice.
Dude,
yeah, that's a great
so
game.
scary. So scary. But what really made Fatal Frame frightening was not what's around the corner. It's that you have to be the one to lift that camera. And when you lift that camera, you don't know what you're going to see. Same with the tapping in the game. Like, you're going to be the one. Like, I don't know what's going to be there when I tap. And so that
the visceral feeling, I totally get it.
That agency really, and we just love Fatal Frame in general. But that sort of like, no, you have to do it. We're making you do it.
Additionally, Silent Hill 2, all these years later, it like I visit in my head that town and that game all the time. Just walk through the streets.
That's unfortunate.
And I know, right?
There's so many places you could go. You go there.
But I think I think that you know, a lot of the meaning and symbolism. I don't know if you've played it, but there is so much, like you talk about, you know, what the town represents, and what, you know, every single enemy. They just, you know, it's funny because Silent Hill has this reputation of just being like this meat circus, right? You've got all these horrible, decrepit creatures roaming about, and for the most part, that's what the series is. But 2 in particular, if you look into, I don't know if you've read up on it or really thought about it much, but every single character, every single enemy, and everything in that game is very, very carefully thought out and has a specific meaning. And the nurses, for example, they're not just sexy, you know, wobbly, you know, gross monsters.
But they are.
Yeah, absolutely they are. But they're meant to represent a very specific, repressed horror that the main character is facing. And I won't say what it is for the, not to, we're what, 15 years later. I don't want to spoil anything because I can't stress it enough how important I feel that game is to read, especially if you're into analyzing, you know, the meaning and that sort of thing. That was a huge, that really, it shocked me. Not just because it's a scary game, but because of what it all meant and what it had to say.
Whoa, what the crap. Sorry, something just jumped out at me.
Oh,
which we're all about to see.
Anyway, so Silent Hill 2 was a huge one as well.
We actually had a team member stream all of the Silent Hills, one right after another. Nice. And I believe he's in the audience right now. I believe his favorite Silent Hill is also Silent Hill 2. And
nice.
I think that was on PlayStation. Or PlayStation 2, or maybe Dreamcast.
2.
And I didn't have that growing up, unfortunately, so I missed out on Silent Hill. The
Uh,
one I was hoping for, at least, was Eternal Darkness. That was my favorite horror game.
Oh, I don't.
Great game.
So you know, it's funny. When I was pitching it to team members and contractors, Eternal Darkness absolutely was in there because there was an inspiration there, specifically with the a lot of the sort of, because the game takes place over hundreds of years.
I think
you wind up
thousands.
Well, no, I'm sorry. So yeah, absolutely. But Perception takes place over hundreds of years as well, where
Gotcha.
what winds up happening is as you solve the questions of what happened here, you wind up jumping back in time, and the house will change, and you'll meet new characters, and like each chapter is a different time period. And so Eternal Darkness was absolutely a huge inspiration in that regard, and I love the way that they played with your perception.
Hey,
Right.
Sorry, I just ran into Delphi. Would you mind explaining Delphi?
Oh, cool. Yeah, totally. You want to talk about it?
Right. So one of the things that Bill studied during his semester on blindness is adaptive technologies that blind people use to navigate their world. And your smartphone, like everybody's smartphone, has all of these amazing accessibility modes. And so with Delphi, Cassie is able to read text to speech. She's able to access her voicemails and send messages. And it's really one of the most critical things that she uses to get around her world. You know, you think about, you know, we just pick up a box of food and read the label. You know, Cassie would have to scan it with Delphi, and Delphi would say, you know, pasta, ingredients, you know, flour, salt, you know.
And yeah, so there's a number of different features that she has on her phone, including one that was inspired by an app called Be My Eyes, which there are a number of people that I spoke with that use it, and it essentially allows blind people to be connected with sighted people via their phones, and they'll be able to use their video chat or pictures to be able to say, hey, you know, what am I looking at here? And so we have a feature like that in the game where there's a character that you can connect with, and they can kind of tell you, hey, you know, maybe you don't go in that
spoilers.
It gets fun. It's one of my most favorite sort of things that emerged from making the game. Was we initially had this little idea and we tried it out, and the more we recorded of this guy, the more fun we had with it.
That's awesome.
We really had fun with it.
And is Delphi, is the name another one of the classics references that you had mentioned, or is that also a play on Siri?
It's a little bit of a reference. I mean, I like I said, for the most part, I avoid mythological references because I prefer literary classics. But yeah, I mean, the Oracle at Delphi.
Yeah.
Kind
of have to do that, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah, I think a lot of her classical references, and again, we're not going to spoil anything, but yeah, there are a lot of, particularly in chapter 2.
Yeah.
2
and 4.
What can we say that's not spoilery?
There are certain plays that emerged in the 1940s that may. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, like, well, we'll leave it for people to figure out. But we always like talking after the fact, just sort of.
Yeah, if anybody wants to get nerdy with me, you can find me on Twitter.
Nice.
So also, I really thank you guys for the Sixth Sense ability, because otherwise I'd just be lost.
It's funny because I feel like every game that I've ever worked on, at the you get to a point in development pretty late where you're like, wait a minute, people are getting lost, and we've done all this stuff and we've guided them, and it's like it's still not working. And in BioShock, we didn't add that little goal arrow thing that points you to where you're supposed to go next to help you navigate. Because Rapture it's a labyrinth, right? It's a little confusing, and there's a lot of backtracking, and we added that arrow because then people were getting lost. Yeah, exactly. And so you think about people getting lost in Rapture. Well, what happens if you're using echolocation, right? So we had this big challenge, and we had this idea of like, well, Cassie. There were some things that we cut, but Cassie has always been susceptible to, I guess, paranormal to a degree.
She has an impressive intuition.
Yes, that's a great. That's like,
A sixth sense, one might say.
Yeah. and so, I love the idea of presenting it that way, where Cassie is able to, like, if the player is having difficulty or wants to know, hey, I want to know where I'm supposed to go next. They can just hit this thing and like, oh, okay, it's over in this direction. And it's interesting because it's, you still have to guide your way there and do the, core mechanic of exploration through echolocation. But I really liked that presentation when it hit us.
Yeah, that's super cool. I also thank you for putting it in there, because otherwise I'd have been lost too.
I also thank you for this box that you can hide in. Made me feel nice and safe.
So we've just got about 5 minutes left in the interview, and I wanted to give you guys a chance to talk a little bit about your next project, if you were so inclined.
Well, only in the Vegas sense.
Okay.
We'll
just talk about this.
No, I would love to.
And also the HD remake. Let's not forget about that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, HD. Yeah, the what I suppose at some point we'll be at the 8K version of the game.
I have a 4K monitor, so I can get the nice copy.
We're not. Sorry. So we're a tiny company. It's primarily Amanda and myself, and then we have a lot of former Irrational folk that we've contracted with. People like Jim. Been very lucky in that regard, but we have, it's currently actually 3 different concepts that we have concept artists kind of messing around with, and we're writing some docs and some pitches, and they're varying in scope and size. It's interesting because when you finish a game, when I use that term finish, we're still, working on the Switch version. That's very, very well. We're waiting for the Switch version to get the okay. I know the updates, and then
when.
I heard the certification process can really be a beast. So
it's interesting because each platform has their own little quirks, but they're all super supportive and super reasonable and fair. And it's just a matter of like, listen, they're dealing with a lot of people, and I can't imagine how they sort through it all. But I mean, they're everyone I've ever had contact with at Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo have been absolutely fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
So I think it's just about making sure you're crossing a lot of T's and dotting a lot of I's and all that sort of thing. So anyway, once we see how the Switch is doing and get some feedback and see what we need to make adjustments for the first update and that sort of thing. I'm also going to be listening to feedback to see things like maybe that permadeath mode. I don't know. There's certainly no promises, but like I said, I would love to continue to update this thing, and I don't know. I would love to add in. It doesn't necessarily make sense to add in chapters, but I don't know, epilogue. Something. I don't know, prologue. I don't know, something.
Things just went yellow.
Additional modes. I'm open, but beyond that, we have a much smaller, tighter idea that I would love to be able to. It's a real challenge as a developer to, you spend 2-3 years on a project. The idea of jumping right back in is sometimes daunting.
Yeah, I can see that.
No matter how much you love the idea, you need a little time to decompress. And for that reason, I really love the idea of doing something. And we have something that is very, very super aggressive, super high concept, and just like, boom, we could really, it's the kind of thing where I was like, I can crank on this and it'll be awesome. And I'd be super jazzed. And then because I know it's not going to be like this really like giant mountain to climb, I could jump right in, and because inspiration is going to drive you a lot, right?
Right.
And it's sometimes difficult to find the drive to like jump right back into something big. So I think it all depends on how things go, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, don't burn yourself out. Definitely got to let the creative wells return.
That's it. I mean, sometimes it's tough to tell where you're really at when you're in the thick of it.
Well, especially when things are going well, as sounds like they have been with Perception.
Yep. No, I think that the fog of war is still there, and so I need to be able to take a step back, But right now it's just we're still high-fiving a lot, We're still on the high five tour, and that's why I love, like I said, just going to the different events and getting the feedback, and it's great.
But yeah, I mean, we cranked long and hard on this game. Like, I think that you guys really should watch the gameumentary on it because, we made this game in our basement and we had 2 babies and we both got crunch and when we were in crunch, we both got incredibly ill with mono still went to conferences. We went to PAX and GDC with mono. I mean, it was.
God, I can't believe that. That's amazing. I'm actually really impressed.
We put everything on the line for this, and it was a lot of work, but it was for family, and awesome. The game is actually about family. It stems from a story in Bill's family that we wanted to tell, and that's really what drove us. So I think that, we really worked long and hard.
It really shows. It really shows. It's always amazing to hear a story like that.
Thank you.
Well, Phanff, did you want to sign us off with letting the good folks know about the charity you wanted to mention?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who are not aware, there are amazing organizations out there that can help you if you or a family member is starting to lose their vision. There's the CNIB, which is the Canadian National Institute of the Blind. There's Bill and Amanda had mentioned, there's the World Access for the Blind. Amazing organizations. Please check them out. They've helped me. They've helped my father. It's just there are resources out there. You are not alone in the dark. There is help there for you.
Nice turn of phrase.
That's great. That's right. That's nice. It's very nice of you.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda and Bill, for being here with us. It was really awesome talking with you.
Thank you.
And I was really glad that I got a chance to meet you in person, too. And I hope you keep coming to indie festivals in Boston year after year. And I hope to see the next game. And,
can't wait to see your next game.
All the little ankle biters running around who will be going to college. And hopefully all the money you'll make on all the great games. So.
Well, no.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, seriously. This is a lot of fun. And, really appreciate it. Great to meet you as well. Excited to show you what's next.
Excellent. Right Great to meet you too.
Thank you.
And folks, just so you know, Starman will be on right after this. He's going to be playing some games, live streaming, of course. So stay tuned if you're inclined to watch that. And we'll be doing more dev duels in the future, bring on more awesome developers, such as those from the Deep End Games who are with us right now. Thanks again, guys, for being here with us. And we hope to talk to you sometime again soon.
Woo.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.